requires a risk that someone else has to take. And that was the moment that our relationship between a Black woman and a white woman changed. Was it me trying to be right or me trying to do right? That's the difference.
In becoming a co-conspirator, you are the sum of all your work, and you create opportunities. Let me repeat that. You create opportunities to disrupt systems. You don't just wait for them.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lucy Leadership Project Book Talk Live. I'm Dr. Kendra Washington Bass.
And I'm Kelly Peaks Horner.
And we welcome you to this monthly experience where Kelly and I either have a guest and we talk about a particular a guest who shares their expertise around a particular topic. Or for this year, we're really trying to share with you all the things that we've been working on through this Unwrapped framework experience. And so each month, we're going to give you a little bit of a taste of what's upcoming. But before we jump into today's discussion around reframing the narrative, a couple of things. One, want to wish all of our assistant principal leaders a happy AP recognition week. The assistant principals do a Herculean job. I mean, these women and men and folks keep the machine going, from bus duty to discipline to feedback and observations, parent conferences, IEP meetings, curriculum designs, PLCs, after school, sports, you name it. They take the vision that the principal has and they implement and enact it. And without them, you would not have the schools running the way that they're running.
Yeah, and you and I have talked about APs in the past.
Yeah.
And, you know, I want to encourage the principals out there who are working with some amazing assistant principals to make sure you're actually seeing them as the future leaders of either your school or a school within your district or a school somewhere else. Because oftentimes that assistant part gets too loud. And instead we forget that really this is their stepping stone to being who you are. I remember when I was in a leadership position once, and the first thing they said to me is, Kelly, your role while you're in this position is to find your replacement. And so I encourage principals to look at their assistant principals as their future replacement and to develop them and prepare them that way. Give them a breadth of responsibility. It's not just the same thing for 3 years, for 4 years, however long they're there. And they are the pipeline. And they, I'm thinking of a song about the future, but they are the future. They are the future leadership of any district.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I applaud assistant principals who continue to serve, especially in this current environment, and continue to help create the very best experiences for students in the classrooms, and continue also to develop the teachers so that they can do their very best in school. So to APs, we salute you. You are seen, and your work does not go unnoticed. Oh yeah, I can never do this right, but I'm gonna try my best.
I always tell you,
that's to our APs.
I was afraid my fingers are going to go someplace else.
We also know that this past month, parts of March and parts of April, a couple of things are happening in the world of education. You have spring break. So for those of you who are out getting some rest, get it well deserved, right? It is a time to just take a breath, refuel, because after this, you're getting close to the end of the school year. So that's One, there's this break. And second, it's also budget season.
Yeah.
And in schools right now, they're deciding on things that they want to make sure they maintain. Unfortunately, some things are being cut. But there are bright spots where there are school districts that are really working some magic to make sure they don't lay off teachers, to make sure materials and resources are taken. But I do know some school districts where they're going to be consolidating schools and closing schools. So this is a really tough time for school districts and for those superintendents and principals and community leaders who are working around that. Again, we would be remiss if we did not acknowledge how hard you all are working to, again, keep the schools moving forward in very complex times.
Yeah, it's the school district where I live right now is looking at possibly a 4-day week. So
Wow.
for budget reasons. So yeah, it's unbelievable work. And it is, I always believe and will always believe that our schools and education is the cornerstone of our democracy.
Oh, absolutely. And you can see why it's under attack
Yes, 100%.
because of the way in which we are um, developing kids to be critical thinkers. And if you can keep the knowledge away from children, if you can take that away from people, you can lead them blindly.
Yeah.
And so, we are fighting through our work for justice in education, and we're fighting for the women and also the men, but we're fighting specifically for the women and for them to have the courage to speak up, have the courage to have the tools and strategies to do so, and to lead in ways that are uplifting the people in their care, and while maintaining their own healthy well-being and relationships with themselves and the people around them. So this is, again, a very difficult time in education, but it's also a very difficult time in our country.
Yeah.
Right. The things that are happening, the relationships between our country and other countries. We're not going to go into the full sort of political spectrum, but we also know how that impacts how people are showing up to work, showing up at home, the amount of stress that is on us. And, again, just to not be tone deaf and not acknowledge the amount of weight that this is having on some of our Iranian American brothers and sisters who are experiencing this. It's just heartbreaking to see what's happening in some of our sister countries as they continue to fight for their own democracy, and we try to preserve ours here in this country.
Yeah. Yeah. And, we spend a lot of time in the Unwrapped community talking about well-being.
Mhm.
And you have to know that you are different when you are struggling or suffering in your well-being. You
Right.
show up differently. You can't use your strengths in the same way. You're a different kind of leader, and you get to define what leadership is for you. You show up differently for your family, for your friends. You show up differently at work. So it's so important in this time to do a couple of things. One is to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
And, I'm going to take a lesson from, if you ever watch Don Lemon when he goes live, at the very end of his broadcast, he always says, turn the TV off, take a break, give yourself a break, and go do something, and don't be all consuming. So
Right.
give yourself a break, do something for yourself. So that's going to be huge. And then the other one is have a joy plan. Do something that brings you joy in the moment, because even in the moments of resistance, you've got to have joy. And so take care of yourself and your well-being and find moments of joy. And when you find those moments of joy, really embrace them. Sometimes in these moments, we also feel like I shouldn't be in this
Mhm.
moment of joy. No, because what happens is on the other side of that joy, you are ready to get back into it.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah. Thank you for saying that, because for the past few days in the month of April, I've been just posting, um,
I love it.
just enjoying music that is uplifting, And I'm not apologizing for where I am in my mental state, in my relationships. I'm blessed, and I want to be an encourager. I mean, that's why I'm called the Chief Encouragement Officer, right? Be the encourager, that, it's just recognizing the small things can also bring you joy. So just dancing to a favorite song and listening to favorite music, or taking that breath, taking care of yourself and having that joy plan. Mine is connecting with you, Kelly. Mine is being with my family, is doing this work. I am in my spirit of joy, even within this tornado.
Yeah. Yeah,
of
I sang Golden with you the other day on your
You
video.
sang Golden? Thank
Oh,
you.
yeah.
We'll just,
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I had to play that a couple times. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, you
are
go,
you
girl."
doing the
Yeah,
Are you doing the Cabbage Patch? Is that what I see happening right there? Oh, that looks more like churning butter. But okay, we all start from somewhere.
Somewhere that's in my history, I'm sure.
So today, for those of you who um, have not met us, I just want to do some brief introductions. Maybe this is your first time meeting Kelly and myself, and so I'll do a brief introduction of who I am. Kelly will do a brief introduction, and then we'll talk a little bit about what's this thing that we have finally sort of created, this framework, which we call the Unwrapped framework. So again, as a way of introduction, my name is Dr. Kendra Washington Bass. I have been in education as my career for 32 years now. Started as a teacher in New York City, elementary and middle school teacher, then opened up a middle school in the Bronx, became a principal of a middle school in Manhattan, and then moved to Georgia to work at the district level in leadership development. So developing leaders, which is what I continue to do. And what brings me to this work is my own lived experience as a Black woman in leadership, and what I had in terms of an idea of what leaders do, how they show up, what actually became a reality, and then how I went from that semblance of a reality to where I am today. And had the privilege of meeting Kelly back in 2008 in another relationship, and that relationship has evolved to what we do today, jointly in helping women to thrive in their work, specifically women and educational leaders.
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit about me. And then Kelly, who are you?
Who I am. Who I am. I have 42 years in education, as a teacher, and then in various leadership positions from district level to school level, to actually teacher association / union, teacher union level, where I really cut my teeth in the political
Mhm.
side, also of education, and cut my teeth in politics and social justice. From there, I went on to work at a large research organization, the Gallup organization. And Gallup is not a polling company, although most
Mhm.
people know it as the polling company. It's a small part of what they do. It is really a research company, and I love that work, working with school leaders across the country, looking at what don't you know, what more do you want to know, and where do you want to go, and how can we help you get there. That's where Kendra and I met, and how we met. And then when I left there in 2017, I think probably another pivotal moment for me was in 2019, was trained in courageous leadership work with Dr. Brene Brown, and in that work, and my aha then in that moment wasn't just her work, but it was realizing that in all the leadership programming that I had received and all the leadership training I had received, so much of it was about skill and knowledge and um, policy and all of that. Very little was about how am I showing up? What kind of leader do I want to be? How do I change culture? How do I, as we like to say in Lucy Leadership, how do I become a co-conspirator and disrupt for the good, for the better?
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of set out on that journey, with that data and research, and then Kendra and I in 2020 went off on this journey to write a book together. And then we founded the Lucy Leadership Project. And so all of that culminates to where we are today.
Yeah. And, one of the things that is, that I can see now, which you can't sometimes see when you're in the middle of the storm or the tornado, as you want to call it, is why these things happen the way that they happen, right? These things that you may not think of them as a coincidence, but they have to merge together to create, for me and for you, they merge together and create what we have right now. And so I want to start with a quick anecdote that's going to lead to this idea of reframing the narrative. And this happened during the time you and I began talking in 2020. So for those of you who are listening, you all have your different experiences around what was happening in 2020. I just remember March 12th being at a professional learning, facilitating along with my colleague Michelle, and seeing a buzz happening in the room and being told that we were going to be shutting down, take home your laptops if you have them, and we're combating this thing called COVID. And at the time, very little was really known to the public about the how severe this disease was going to be and how it became a pandemic. So during that time, it got quiet basically on the planet for the most part, right? People were sheltering in place. The sky was just so crisp because pollution was minimized. It was just something eerie and beautiful at the same time. And then Memorial Weekend or the end of May hit, and George Floyd was murdered. Let me say the words correctly. He was murdered. And I just recall a number of different people asking for an audience with me to talk through what they were experiencing. And really it was from white folks who were asking me, well, what should I do? And how should I be? And what could happen? And what's our next move? And I was both frustrated by the request, and yet also like, could this be a tipping point in our country that sparks this long-awaited conversation that just needs to be had? So I took somebody up on an offer, and he and I had this interesting conversation about, I'm going to use the word strengths for now, but for lack of a better word, this profile, this instrument that he was using to sort of talk about your behavior styles. And he was saying, what more can we do? Because right now, the way they sit, we have not been taking into consideration race and gender and other intersectionalities around them. And so we had this conversation. I remember where I was. I was on the deck of my house talking with him, and he asking me if I wouldn't mind writing a blog. I was like, I could do that, right? But with my thoughts, because he thought it was quite interesting how I was explaining from my perspective what that looks like. And I don't think he's ever been asked that. And so I did that. And then he asked me to be a guest on a podcast or a video cast like this to talk about it. And that's where the article, I Controlled the Narrative, came from. And this had to do with being in the strengths world, being an achiever or controller, being a person who has high levels of responsibility and learner, being a relator in my strengths, and then holding on to being a persuader to a certain extent. And what that looks like on the surface is, great. Those words sound great. You're an achiever, you're a controller, you're a persuader, you have responsibility. Layer that with race, gender identity, and faith, it becomes something totally different. And at the same time that I was thinking through how I show up to other people with those, what you would call strengths or talents or behavior style, I thought it is my superpower. To other people, it is what threatens them. And you and I began having our conversation about what does this mean for women in leadership when we begin showing up in this way. And I said, instead of letting that other people control how they see me and me taking that on, I'm going to control that. I'm going to take on those words and actually leverage those for my strength. And it wasn't until that moment that I thought about it in that way. And it wasn't until you wrote your chapter on new brave new ending. And so I say that to couch this conversation in the fact that we are now at a point in the series where the women are going to begin writing their new narrative, begin talking about stripping away a story that they might be holding on to, and either bringing forth the story they've been had all along inside them, or writing a new one. And so I want you to share a little bit about what it meant for you to write that chapter, why the brave new ending, and what does that mean for you?
Yeah. So I'm going to layer on to what you just said just a little bit. In 2019, when I received the training on courageous leadership, on courageous skill sets, and for those of you who know the work of Dr. Brene Brown, know that she's a shame researcher. She researches shame and vulnerability and courage in leadership, but also in cultures.
Right.
And prior to that, in the strengths world, there was some conversation going on about how strengths were being presented and how strengths were being presented through a white lens, through a mono experience, meaning that everybody has the same experience, right? So everybody experiences systems and cultures the same way. And so that was kind of an underlying unspoken assumption. So when we talked about people with command, well, just use your command. Command are people who aren't afraid to make decisions, without recognizing that someone who has command that looks like me, that may be received differently than someone who has command that looks like you. That might be received differently. So that conversation was happening. At the same time, right around when you and I were writing the book, 2020, 21, 22, when I was teaching the courageous leadership, there started to be some conversation about even that work being introduced through a very white experience, a very white lens. So as I'm teaching virtual classrooms of women, where the vast majority of them were women of color. And the first time I taught it, and I'm going, well, just be vulnerable, and they're looking at me like, you crazy white girl, what the heck are you saying? Are you kidding me? If I do that, do you know what happens? And so I had to pull back and I had to do some of my own, what I do. I go into research mode, I go into learning mode.
Right.
When I'm feeling something is off, there's a way I'm presenting that is just not right. And so I started reading about how most professional development is actually presented through a white lens.
Yeah.
And a singular experience. So that forced me to then start thinking about my own experience and where I was coming from and like you said, having gone through that kind of storm and tornado, is, okay, do I change everything about me now? Where do I go from here? And I started to think, no, it isn't really about changing everything. It's about reframing it in a way.
Mhm.
So my peacekeeper will always be part of who I am. That was my thing that I named, but how do I use that in a different way? How do I reframe that
Right.
way that still aligns myself to my values of being a co-conspirator and wanting to disrupt systems? So part of my experience in coming through all of that, and like you mentioned, going through 2020 and watching George Floyd's murder, how do I take that experience and reframe that and look at how I'm showing up? Now I had to do some learning and some relearning and some deconstructing and to understand what was I witnessing? What was happening here? And what was I seeing? And so, I read all the books and, did all the things and listened to all the podcasts. And so all of that to say, it culminated in this brave new ending that even when we go through something, and a lot of the women that are in the unwrapped community right now and in the cohort have something that they're experiencing right now. And nowhere have we talked about, well, you need to change. Well, it's just about how do you take that thing and how do you reframe it so that you come out stronger, more you, more
Mhm.
authentic. You have this brave new ending where you're reframing rather than changing. And I think using that word um, gives us the power, gives you the power.
Right.
Changing comes from external. I need you to change. I need you to do something different. That's the external world saying you're wrong. What you're doing
Mhm.
is wrong. Reframing comes from the internal saying, I own it. I have the power and I have the power to create a new ending, a brave new ending. And I have the power then to take all of these things that I'm learning about myself, whether it's your strengths, whether it's the thing, whether it's your story, and create something different for myself.
Yeah, it makes me think of another conversation that we had, and some conversations I have with Black women around this idea of being a bag lady,
Mm,
right? This these things that we carry and all the different types of bags that we carry, and many times we don't put them down. We just add another bag and we take on another bag. And those bags are our stories. It's the
mhm,
things that we're holding on to. Some of those bags have precious memories and they're really nice and they bring us joy, and others are very weighty and they drag us down. They have things in them that don't serve us. They have things in them we don't even use anymore. So I think of that analogy of this reframing to like really taking a look at what is it that we've been carrying? Why have we been carrying that? And then what do we want to put down?
mhm,
Maybe pick up, maybe finally use some of the things in that bag. And so when I think about my life story, I mean, one of the things for those of you who are listening, one of the things that we've had the women in the Unwrapped series go through and the cohort go through is writing their origin stories, right? Just examining over time up to this critical point in their lives. So what's it look like? What are the twists and turns? What made you who you are? Embrace that, because that thing that made you who you are has served you to a certain degree. And once you've named that, once you've figured that out, you can name it. What's the thing that you can sort of put to the adjective that you can use, or noun you can use to describe that thing? For me, the hustler; for you, the peacekeeper. And then it's like, okay, so what do we want to hold on to? And what about that is actually strong?
mhm.
And that's when we sort of unwrapped to really realize what we do well that's that's serving us, but also that we can leverage
Mhm.
to lead in a way that's authentic, to lead in a way that is freeing.
Mhm.
And now it's like, okay, so what's the story now? What is it? And for me, the new bag that I'm bringing forward is um, I can't put it into a word yet, but this is the idea of betting on myself.
Mm.
This idea around not waiting for someone to say that I am worthy, that I am worthy, that I can say that without apology, that I can say that I'm good at what I do without being timid
Mhm.
around saying. Now, I don't ever consider myself really a timid person, but just because I said it and I look at was in some cases I was faking it.
Yeah.
Right? It was like if I just say it out loud, maybe I'll really believe it, right? But no, I fundamentally believe that I am a brilliant person at what I do, that I'm a kick-ass coach, I'm a fantastic facilitator, I'm a great thinker and a thought partner. I'm a really good friend to those who are really close to me. I love hard. I have acts of service.
Mm.
I am very clear about who I am and what I do well. I'm also very clear about what I don't do well. And I'm not trying to step into that realm when I don't know how to do something, right? That's like, Kelly, get to the data because I'm not gonna, right? So I'm when people say, "Are you unapologetically authentic?" and all, I can say I am.
Mhm.
I can truly say that I'm in a space where I absolutely believe the words coming out of my mouth about who I say I am. I'm not trying to hustle myself into thinking that. And that is what I'm bringing into this reframe. That's what I'm carrying forward. What about you, Kelly? What are you carrying forward? Because you have changed so much.
Well, and what I love about what you just said, and you and I try not to use these 2 words, but I'm gonna use them. It is the antidote to imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
To be
Absolutely.
very clear about this is what I kick ass at. This is what I do really well.
Yeah, yeah.
This is what maybe I'm gonna manage, and this is what I'm gonna get somebody else to help me with, but
Right.
these are the things I do, and I'm gonna stay clear about that, and I'm
Mhm.
not gonna apologize for it, and when somebody asks me, I'll tell them, "This is what I
Yeah,
do very well."
yeah.
So, it's ever since, I think 2 sessions ago when we did the Name the Thing, I've been thinking about this, and I do not wanna let go of that peacekeeper. However,
Mhm.
have to define her
Yes.
in a very different way. And I have to define and I actually love her now because before it was my peacekeeper was more about preventing something from happening,
Right.
preventing discomfort, stopping
Mhm.
emotion.
Mhm.
That it was that kind of it was that trying to keep the waters calm.
Yep.
Now I realize to be the peacekeeper, sometimes there needs to be a tidal wave.
Yeah, right.
Sometimes sometimes in order to keep the peace, and I need to ask myself every time, who am I keeping the peace for? Am I
Ah,
keeping the peace for someone who just made a racist joke in the room?
yeah, right, right.
Am I keeping the peace for someone who just did the most misogynistic thing to a friend? Am I keeping the peace? So I have to ask myself some questions around who am I keeping the peace for? And how do I get to that peace? Because sometimes to get to that peace, you're gonna have to ruffle some feathers. You're
Mhm.
gonna have to call some things out. I remember, I've told this before. I remember this was many years ago. I was at a talk by a very popular, famous social justice activist, and he was a black man, and he was asked by a white woman in the audience. She said, what is my role in social justice and in fighting racism and in fighting, equity and equality and all of the things. And he said something that sounds so simple, but is in reality sometimes very hard to do. And he said, tell the truth in every room you're in. Because he said, we're all in different rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And so tell the truth. And sometimes I need to tell, in order to keep the peace, for someone I may never have ever met or never might meet, in order to keep the peace, I might have to tell the truth in a room of people that I know very well. And it might ruffle some feathers. And I am very comfortable now with the ramifications, with the possible consequences of that, with what might come out of that, because doing that aligns myself to my values.
Right.
And yeah, so that's the thing for me that I come through this with is ever since 2020, when we were writing our origin stories and I realized my patterns were coming up as this constant need to keep things peaceful, but it was for not the healthy reasons. I don't want to say right or wrong reasons, but the
Yeah.
healthy reasons. I am reframing her
Yeah.
in a different way.
I love that. I mean, I think that gets to why this Unwrapped framework series is so powerful. I said to someone who was like, describe it for me. And, I did. I gave them an overview of what it was, the different series and workshops and what they all mean. And I said, it has exceeded what I imagined when we scripted it out on the again. Here we go. We whiteboarded.
I
Think about that. When we were whiteboarding what this would look like, and it clicked, right? That taking women through the Unwrapped framework series is akin to taking them through our unwrapping in our book, to hear the conversations that are being had in the Zoom room with really total strangers who have now become this beautiful sisterhood in this room, to what they're sharing, to the encouragement that they're giving, to being listened to without judgment, to say things without fear of retribution, to
cry
show up as you are,
and to cry if they have
and
to
to
cry.
cry, to laugh, to talk offline. Apparently, they're having conversations with each other outside of this.
Well, after the first session, they asked us, "Are we going to get everybody's email? Are we
Right.
going to get contact information? We want to keep talking."
It's exactly what we
Yeah.
thought we were building, this community, and that's what it has become.
I would say 100% plus. I think what it's showing us is there's a need for this. There's a need for filling in the gaps of what we traditionally receive in our development work and professional development and leadership and all of that. There are gaps in it. And that gap is personal. And who
Yes.
am I? And how do I want to show up? And what does that look like?
Well, and also, for those of you who are listening and interested, it's not a bitch, whine, and moan session either,
No.
right? We're not there to, oh, woe is me and wallow, right? People get a chance to share experiences, give examples of things, and then we give them opportunities to try something out, a tool, a strategy, to reflect, ask the question, why do you do what you do? How is it serving you? How is it not? What would it take for you to get 10% braver, or
Yeah.
a little more courageous, or just one thing? And I think that is what can turn this around. That in the end, we want the women to walk away from that stronger, more confident, with the words and strategies to use to be sure about who they are, and to know that they are enough.
Yeah.
And to be well in doing that.
Yep. Thriving.
and to be thriving. Now, does this happen overnight? No, this is a journey. And we talked about this is the becoming era. And we hope that the framework provides the the guidance needed as you're going through this. So what I want to do as we get ready to close is share a little more details about Reframe the Narrative for those of you who are interested, and also to share that we are a little over halfway through the first with the first cohort through the series, and that we will be launching a interest form for the fall cohort for women to join. But let's share a little bit, Kelly, about this Unwrapped experience. It's coming up on Saturday, April 25th. All of them are on Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern. For some of our sisters who are one in Colorado, one in Dallas, Texas,
Yeah.
they're getting up at 7, right? They're there from 7 to 9 to 10, 7 to 10.
Yeah.
And so we so appreciate that they are with us on that journey. But I'm gonna go back. I see I started from the back. So let me go here to bring us here. Let's start right here. So Reframing the Narrative, that's the name of the next series workshop in April. And I want us to go right here to what Kelly just shared a few moments ago, a quote from Brene Brown. And Kelly, because you have been trained by her, I want to have you talk to this particular slide and give a little more context around it.
Yeah, and this quote is what we see coming to life in the series. So when we deny the story, it defines us. When we own the story, we can write a brave new ending.
Mhm.
It's a lot like what I just said about my peacekeeper. When I deny her, that part of me, then it defines me. It's who I am. It's the one who will always calm the waters. It's the one who will always say yes when I'm asked to do something. So it becomes it defines who I am, but not in a way that's authentic, not in a way that's aligned to my values.
Right.
But when I own it, and when I own her, and I own that part of the story, I can define her. I can say, this is what the peacekeeper is. This is what it looks like. And I can write this brave new ending. It can look different. And so otherwise, and I think about the stories the women are telling in the cohort,
Right.
where so much of their own experience is just defining them right now. And we are not our mistakes that we've made. We are not our challenges. We are not our struggles. We are not our traumas. We are much more than that. And sometimes we let all of those things, we are not getting that job that we applied for. That's
Right.
not who we are, but we let it define us. And so when we own that and say, yes, that didn't happen. However, I'm going to reframe it and say it was not meant for me. So I'm going to go look for something else. Then we can write a brave new ending.
Yeah. So to that question, that's right underneath, Brene Brown. So what part of our story isn't being told? What's the thing that you want? And one of the things we will do is this narrative excavation, right? This is where we begin to dig a little bit deeper to find out what we want to own. Before we do that, we ask you to do the following, right? What's the story you've been leading from at this point, right? Just to rename it, exactly what you just said. The story shows up when this happens. And then how does it connect to your strength? And what's the cost of that story?
Yeah.
So, it is the pattern. So just bringing back the pattern that has been connected to the strength. And for me, the hustler and the achiever, those are connected. But remember, when you leave them unchecked, that's when they become overextensions. That's when they don't serve you and lead to any positive results. That's what we're trying to excavate for.
Yeah. And there's always a cost.
It's always a cost, right? Always a cost. And so I want us to think about this Clifton strengths. And, strengths are not the problem here, right? Your interpretation of them is, right? So even the word that you are bringing is not, peacekeeper is not the problem. It's the interpretation that you are bringing to it. So here's a couple of them, right? I think you and I both share responsibility
I think so.
in our top 5. It can sound like over functioning.
Yeah.
Someone with empathy, it can sound like we're absorbing everything. Someone with harmony avoids the truth. Someone with achiever, overworking. Someone with relator, you're taking on emotional labor, right? These are the ways in which that could be part of the story. That could be true. But what happens when you take control of it? It can also look like this. That those particular strengths, when you're overdoing them, can prevent you from living a life well lived.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's the case, the antidote to that is boundary setting.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to put some boundaries around what you will and will not do that is costing you. And with that comes liberation. So I love this because we get to introduce the women to the anatomy of the boundary setting in this segment. And so here's how it can sound when we're looking at a brave new ending and you're using boundaries. The old narrative can sound like this. You say yes to everything. You carry what others drop. Listen, I resemble that. You're being strong, but not being honest. You're over functioning to syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it said lost connection. I'm like, just when we get in there.
Just a second. You did.
Am I back?
Now I can hear you. You're back. And this old narrative around boundaries is how we perceive boundaries. Because oftentimes I love working with women and boundaries, women leaders and boundaries, because almost every time we ask the question, when we say boundaries, what comes to mind? Well, I don't know how to say no. I don't say boundaries is not necessarily saying no all the time. Again, it's a reframing of how we approach and think of boundaries. And so it's not always saying no. The other thing it does is when we are stuck in the old narrative, it takes us away from our values because we are talking about people under our breath. We may say yes to everything, but when I'm making those cupcakes for the school function at 11 o'clock at night, I am cussing out the PTA president under my breath because I said yes because I did not know how to say, I don't have the bandwidth for that right now, but keep me on the list.
Or you said yes, say yes, and then I have to listen to you, or someone has to listen to me complain, and I brought that on myself. Right now, the truth that I had for me was what I was getting out of that was being really busy.
Yeah.
Were people going, you just doing so much. They still say that now, but now it's under my own terms.
Yeah.
But it's like you're just doing so much. Oh my goodness, how you do? And I got a kick out of that. But I was, I promise you, there were moments where I was laid up in the hospital because I fainted. Lack of water, not eating right, not sleeping. It's bad enough menopause is already kicking my butt in this thing. I don't need to add to it, right? So, all the things, you become dehydrated, you start to not take care of yourself for this small fleeting moment of ego stroking.
Yeah. And
So,
someone's benefiting from you not setting boundaries.
Oh, for sure. I mean, they get to get whatever they want from me, and I get to, right? So I'm getting something and they're also getting something. But here's how it sounds when you're really thinking about reframing your narrative and going toward a brave new ending. And this is what you said. You choose what aligns to your values.
Mm-hmm.
The responsibility is now shared. You're not just picking up what someone else is dropping. You also lead with clarity. You see things in a whole different way. You see patterns. It's almost like the Matrix. You can see.
Yeah.
what's happening. You also set limits without guilt. No is a complete sentence, and I am walking away. I owe you no
Don't give a
explanation.
dissertation
No,
to
I'm not
convince them
giving
you're still a good
nothing.
person.
Right. And also, you honor your capacity. It is a way of taking care of your mind, your body, and your soul. You're
You can
saying, go ahead,
Yeah,
go ahead, Counsel.
well, I was just gonna say, you cannot have a thriving well-being without boundaries.
Correct. Correct. So this is where, again, we're going to get into more of this. So that's why it's so important. So here's what the series has looked like. There's the Understand Your Story, which we had in January. That's how we kicked it off. Just get right down to it. Who are we? Then we name the thing, the pattern. And then last month we talked about your strengths. So now we're starting to shift. And now it's like, let's shift our perspective to create this empowering story that we're going to lead from. And
Yeah,
then the last
and
two,
let me
align to your purpose and
say,
prioritize what's strong.
if someone's listening and they're saying, "Ah, I'd love to just see what this is about and try this out on April 25th,"
Yeah,
come and join. Even if you
right.
haven't been to the first 3, you can join. We'll give you, we correspond with you, and we'll send you some questions to think about to prepare yourselves for that session. So don't worry if you haven't been to the first 3.
Right.
If you wanna wait till the fall and start from the beginning and go all the way through, awesome. But still, if you say, "I wanna dip my toe in and try this," then come join us.
Yeah, and here's the thing. There's some of you who might have already done your origin stories before,
Mhm.
right? You might have already done Clifton Strengths. So if you already done it, the one thing that you may be missing a bit is just the community that of women who went along, for the first 3. But starting here doesn't mean that you can't continue to work on reframing your narrative. And so we really do appreciate the work that the women have been doing and the community has been created. And if you are longing for that community, if you want to get energized from the women in the Zoom, because we do it over Zoom, for the women in the Zoom, we do recommend you join us. Bet on yourself. Take that step. I will put here, I know we have the QR code here, but I also have the QR code here. So that's right there in front of us. So if you're interested, just click that QR code. You also can go on our website at lucyleadershipproject.com, and you will see in the Unwrapped series, you can register right there. We are going to continue with our cohort of women. We have about 20 of them in the cohort. Again, it's been absolutely refreshing. It's like I'm going through my own learning all over again, and continuing to take that learning stance. So please join us. And before we log off, I just want to also just name a couple of things. One, as you all are thinking about what's next for you, I also want to ground it in, April is springtime, and this is when things are anew. And so, reframe the narrative is a really great time to start your newness and to begin to walk in your new.
Yeah.
And I will say from my experience and my evolution, people who do know me, people who've met me, especially after I moved here to Georgia, and who knew me then and who know me now are like, you look, walk, sound, show up different. And it's because I've been unwrapping.
Yep.
It's because I've been putting to work what we said in our book we were going to do, and we're
Yep.
continuing to do that every day. So if you're interested in that, if you're ready for that metamorphosis, join us. And
And
so
the
I
And the other thing we'll have on our website very soon is an interest form. So if you say, "I wanna do this, but I wanna start from the beginning, I wanna do it in the fall," go to our website, we'll have an interest form on there, and you don't have to do it alone. If you have another sister, whether that
Mhm.
sister's at work, whether it's somebody just best friend in your life, you can do it with someone. So if you wanna and that way you can leave and you can keep talking about it. You can keep talking about it through the month till the next session. So look for that form on our website, lucyleadershipproject.com, and just let us know, yeah, I'm interested in the fall. We'll be looking at those dates and setting those dates within the next couple of weeks, and you'll see when those dates are for the fall. So
Yeah.
join us this Saturday if you want to dip your toe in and try and see what Reframe the Narrative is about, or go ahead and sign up for the fall, and then we'll let you know once we release the dates.
Yeah. So we want to thank you for
Yes.
taking time out of your personal vacation. Some of you are on spring break. Some of you maybe not, like I don't get a spring break, but you are, home or with family and just listening and being engaged in our conversation. This will be recorded, and so you can go back and watch it or share it with folks. We'll also take some excerpts from it. So thank you so much. And to our sisters out there, hold on, hold strong. You are enough. You were born in perfectly perfect.
Yep.
And to just claim that is liberating.
Yep. And as we always say, it's time to become unwrapped.
For sure. Have a good night, everyone, and see you